Welcome to Sports with Marlon. This segment is brought to you courtesy Next TV. Sports and politics, they'll never go hand in hand, and I guess they never will. Now recently, a prominent sportsman, Roshan Mahanama, a former Sri Lankan cricketer and reputed ICC match referee, launched his autobiography titled My Innings, Retired Hurt to the Best View of the Game. It was launched recently. Now, with the launching of this book, a prominent newspaper published an article taking a paragraph from this book and went on to state, quote, among those who follow the gentleman's game closely, many regard UNP leader Ranil Wickremesinghe as Mr. Clean. But if they get a hold of Roshan Mahanama's new book, they will have a second opinion. Mahanama, in his autobiography, My Innings, goes on to claim that Wickremesinghe, as Prime Minister in 2002, stopped then cricket chief Hemaka Amarasuriya from attending an ICC meeting and instead nominated Tilanga Sumathipala. Now, the moment this was published in this prominent newspaper, the former chairman of the interim committee, Hemaka Amarasuriya, after the publication of this newspaper's story, wrote a letter to them and wanted it published as a right of reply. Perhaps he was influenced by the paragraph that was published in Roshan Mahanama's book. So let me read that particular paragraph that has now caused a political stir. We were appointed to manage Sri Lanka cricket due to prevalent issue at the time till fresh elections appointed a new committee. However, this was a very brief stint as the level of politics involved was contrary to my work ethic and principles. As an example, the interim committee decided that the chairman, Mr. Hemaka Amarasuriya, should attend the ICC annual meeting. However, the Honourable Prime Minister at the time, Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, overruled and said that Mr. Tilanga Sumathipala, who was not even part of the committee at the time, would attend instead. Hence, I felt that within such an environment, there was no point appointing us as a committee to run the operations if external forces were interfering and making decisions such as these. Therefore, it was best to step down and not be part of such a setup. And I resigned on a matter of principle. The former chairman, Hemaka Amarasuriya, in his letter to this prominent newspaper, went on to state, quote, I write with reference to the above article and wish to point out certain misstatements and inaccuracies pertaining to the book written by former Sri Lankan cricketer Roshan Mahanama, My Innings, Retired Hurt to the Best View of the Game. However, at the end of this letter, he goes on to state, thus, the first two paragraphs of the said article are misleading and the accounts therein are inaccurate, stating that the published article had inaccuracies and also the book Autobiography of Roshan Mahanama contained inaccurate information. Whilst this entire saga unfolded, we decided to contact Roshan Mahanama himself. Mahanama, refusing to answer any of the questions, went on to state that number one, this is his autobiography. Number two, that he has not published any sensational information in the book in order to boost sales. And thirdly, any proceeds from the sale of this autobiography would be going towards charity. However, he requested us to contact Mr. Siddharth Vettamuni or Mr. Michael Tissera or Mr. Kushil Gunasekara, members of the interim committee at that time who tendered their resignation. So, based on what Mr. Roshan Mahanama said, we then decided to contact Mr. Kushil Gunasekara, who was the secretary of the interim committee at that time. Now, this is what Mr. Gunasekara had to say. Mr. Gunasekara said that at one of the meetings, Mr. Hemaka Amarasuriya, the chairman, informed all of them in attendance that the next ICC meeting at Lord's was going to be attended by the former Sri Lanka cricket president, Mr. Tilanga Sumathipala. Mr. Gunasekara said that at this time we were baffled and we did not agree. However, Mr. Amarasuriya then reiterated that it was a government decision that the former Sri Lanka cricket president attend. Mr. Gunasekara then said at this time we all decided to tender our resignations and leave. Our resignations were accepted and then we left. Mr. Gunasekara then said, after they had left, it was brought to their attention that Mr. Tilanga Sumatipala was not permitted to attend this meeting as Mr. Clifford Ratwatta had filed a case in court and an injunction order was served where Mr. Sumatipala could not attend this meeting. Thereafter, Mr. Amarasuriya had sought the government's advice as to what to do, and he was advised to seek the Attorney General's opinion, and the Attorney General had advised that Mr. Amarasuriya do attend the meeting. Thereafter, Mr. Hemaka Amarasuriya did eventually attend the meeting at Lord's. However, Mr. Gunasekara came up with something very interesting, and he posed a question too. He asked the question, has anyone asked why the interim committee members left? And if Mr. Hemaka Amarasuriya did attend the meeting at Lord's, why did they leave? That is an important question that needs to be answered. And the best person who could answer that question is perhaps Mr. Hemaka Amarasuriya himself. Because Kushil Gunasekara goes on to say that according to the publication in the newspaper, where it is questioned about the former Prime Minister being Mr. Clean or not, and with the answer supposed to be in Roshan Mahanama's autobiography, he says the answer to that actually lies with Mr. Hemaka Amarasuriya. Now, what we did thereafter was contact the former Prime Minister, Mr. Ranil Wickramasinghe's media unit, to obtain a quote from them. And this is what they said. Quote, "This is a fabrication of the truth, and the former Prime Minister did not intervene on behalf of any individual, but instead informed the former chairman that he should seek the advice of the AG regarding this matter." Well, we hope Mr. Hemaka Amarasuriya is watching this program, because he is the only person that we could not contact up until now. Perhaps if he does contact us, we will be happy to bring you part 2 of this episode. Many people were baffled as to if Roshan Mahanama was about to launch his own political career after launching of this autobiography. But there was a little bit of confusion. If so, which party was he going to join? Was it going to be the party with the symbol of the bell or the telephone? We decided to ask Roshan Mahanama ourselves, and he turned around and said, if I was to get into politics, I would have done it 20 years ago. Now, to reiterate that fact, there is a video, an interesting video of what he thinks of politicians, where he was invited as a chief guest at the prize giving at Gateway College, where they were honoring sports personnel. In this, he makes it extremely clear of what his opinion about politicians are. So let's take a look at that clip.
I also must tell you, Harshaya, that I am pleased that you all have refrained from inviting politicians for sporting awards. No offense to anyone who's connected to a politician or who comes from a political background, if anyone's here in the audience. That's my personal view. Sadly, these politicians of our generation does not command any respect, and I think we all should stand to show that to them in no uncertain terms. A politician recently had said that the fellow cricketers are not fit enough. But I look back, reflect, and I thought to myself, how many of the politicians are fit enough to be in parliament?